Good morning, this is the curriculum committee meeting. We're starting at 8:03 on Tuesday, September 7th. I'm Erin Dove, school board member and clerk, and we'll just go around and do introductions. Tony, you want to go?
I'm Tani Schmidt, school board member.
Jen Limmer, superintendent. Emily Melstrand, director of student services.
Jill Reese, Director of Elementary Education.
Heidi Spangola, literacy coordinator.
Laura Jackson, assistant superintendent of teaching and learning.
Carrie Hughes, student services coordinator.
Jennifer Boyer, assistant in curriculum.
Okay, and the only thing on the agenda today is social emotional learning. So I'm going to hand that off to you, Jen.
Yeah, perfect. So just a reminder for our public that this is a committee meeting, so it's a little bit different than a board meeting. It's, you see us just working as a team. It's not live streamed. It is captured by a video and placed on our website, so it's accessible, but there's no public input portion, and we don't engage at this time. So just anyone who comes to a committee meeting, it's kind of just a fishbowl where we do our work transparently, and the public is welcome to come and watch. I know that social emotional learning, our one topic of interest is of high interest for our community. So we also just wanted to reiterate that our resources are available here at our education service building, right on Main Street, if anyone would like to view those. So I'm going to hop up and go through what we have. I have this labeled as working copy because a lot of the foundational pieces are present on our website. But what was missing was some of the more in-depth explanation of our lessons, and I'll get to that work. That's kind of the working part of this draft. But what we did was we wanted to make sure it was very clear for our families, for our students, for our staff, what do we mean by social emotional learning? What are the resources we use? Why are they used? So this is something that as board members you're familiar with as well, but I'm just going to go through and just check our understanding, see if there's any questions you might have. I know you're fielding a lot of input from community members or questions, so just stop at any point along the way to ask us questions. Go for it.
Is social and emotional learning, is that something that's a generic term, or is that a proper noun term? Is that like is that the name of just a particular product?
So social and emotional learning we would consider a generic term. It's when you get into other pieces, some of the resources, second step, you'll see references to CASTLE. So some of those pieces, that's kind of the proper noun. There's something behind that, a company, a group, etc. So social and emotional, we've always worked to educate, we would call the whole child, right? There's an academic side, and then there's that social, emotional, behavioral side. You probably heard it as character ed programs when we were younger, things of that nature, and this is that kind of evolution of that work. And I know when I first came last year, one of the big pieces that was foremost in front of the board and families of concern was welcoming back students after being out of school and being an attention to their own mental health and bringing them back and getting them almost reacclimated to school and some of those kind of expectation components. So that was a large piece. So we talk about, what it is, and there is this graphic right here that is associated, it's adapted from CASTLE, C-A-S-E-L. That's the name of the organization that many are bringing forward concerns around where are some funding streams from this, or hey, there's parts of their work that I don't personally believe in as a family. I want to make sure what exactly is happening in the school setting so I know. So we use this graphic. The state also utilizes this graphic, and you can see our work is color-coded to match. So it really focuses on self-awareness. We also have, in parens, is the West Bend Way. You've seen that in the community, in our businesses, it's around the West Bend Way. And what does that really mean? So self-awareness, it's how are we ready to learn? The self-management, being responsible. Responsible decision-making, being safe, and then in our relationship skills and social awareness, that's being respectful. So we've got those color coded so you can consistently see the themes throughout all grade levels. So that's what that correspondence means. And I think on the website they also have a graphic of the West Bend Way. Again, this is a working document. This also is posted, you know, why do we have this? Carrie Hughes is dancing around that document. So why do we have this? Because sometimes behaviors can interfere with learning for an individual in a class, and also kids don't come to school knowing what all those expectations are. So we're really mindful to explicitly teach those so that kids aren't in violation of expectations without having a full understanding. So it's really a whole realm of kind of the behavioral side of learning. And again, we're welcoming students from, you know, age 4 all the way through being young adults. So there's a lot of learning that happens in those years. We also wanted to highlight, you know, how exactly is this taught? Okay, I see the whys, but how exactly is it taught? How much time is this taking? You'll hear that. You know, is this taking away from my child learning reading, writing, math, you know, those fundamentals that we know we need all kids to learn? And the matter is, it's generally a mini lesson format. In our elementary, it's some kind of morning meeting. When you're in the younger grades, like a 4K environment, and Emily's certainly the expert on that, kids think they're going to play all day, and learning is woven in through play. So there's a lot of concepts being reinforced there. But in elementary, it's generally a mini lesson structure. So we've given you kind of what that sample structure looks like. What are some of the exact prompts that teachers might use? And this is a resource they're provided to help them use that same language as they might introduce a topic or reinforce something. And you're really seeing that, you know, there's an opening of about a minute, a teaching point that takes about a minute, 5 to 6 minutes maybe on a teaching point, some kind of engagement. You can see that engagement looks like, you know, turn to a neighbor, talk about this. Now it's your turn to try something. So you're teaching something and having kids try it. And then making a connection for about another minute. So you can see it truly is a mini lesson. Generally in elementary, it starts their day, but it can be placed kind of throughout that schedule. It's really dependent on classroom schedules and things of that nature. Any question on kind of that format? In our middle school, those lessons are a little bit longer, and I'll go through each kind of area, when and where is this, and who's teaching it. So the when do they learn it? Like I said, 4K, we've got a narrative, but it's almost woven in throughout. Kids think they're playing, you know, they're learning numbers, they're learning letters, they're learning how to play successfully, both independently and maybe for the first time with peers. You know, even if they've got younger or older siblings in the home, you know, that's a different dynamic than playing with peers for the first time. Anything you want to add on early learning, Emily? I know I'm not doing justice for the whole scope of early learning, but
You're doing a great job. I mean, certainly some of that is done through children's literature, so, you know, they will identify a study unit for the week. You know, at the beginning of the year, it's the study unit's going to focus on welcoming friends to school and how to be a good friend. So some of that's going to be presented in their children's literature story read. And then it's really just kind of woven in throughout the day, helping them remember how to share, what strategies can you use to solve a problem. So there's a mini lesson format, but the majority of the teaching is kind of on the spot during play, reinforcing skills. So I think you did just fine.
And one of the things that we wanted to do was, again, be really transparent around what this is, what this looks like. So, you know, credit goes to the team and certainly Emily and Carrie's leadership. But putting together, you know, what are those books? Because a lot of times you're reading stories to young children. So what is that list of books so that people can look at them? We've even got, I'll show you the lesson work that's been accomplished, something we're really proud of, so that people can see like, oh, and what books would be used to reinforce this lesson? How is that used? That kind of thing. So you'll see those links. So again, we'll get these updated on our website too. In elementary, as I said, it's a lot a morning meeting, a mini lesson, And all the way through elementary, this is also reinforced by the counselors. So we have school counselors in every single school in the district, dedicated staff, and counselors do a minimum of 10 lessons that are aligned to this, and we'll go through that lesson list as well. And those are about 30 to 45 minutes, and they'll work with the teacher on those lessons, and they're connected around something, and they have room to be responsive to kids, the class, maybe they're working on something, and this would be timed right here, that kind of thing. But what we want to do is make sure that everything is articulated in a manner that our teachers have access to good tools, our families have access to everything so that they can take a look and have good conversations at home. I said, how many times have everyone gone home and you're at the dinner table and it's like, what'd you learn at school today? And standard answer is nothing. I don't know, I don't remember. Making sure that our curriculum is articulated in a manner that everyone knows what everyone's learning, what are those expectations, so that you can have conversations at home, you can look ahead, and if there's something that's not in alignment with what you want to teach, how you want to teach it, you prefer to teach that concept at home, something like that, you have the ability to step out then in a proactive manner instead of like, ooh, my kid had this and we talk about it a little differently at home, I wish I would have known about that. So we're trying to get this in the hands of everyone so that they can be really proactive, take a look, see exactly what's going on in our classrooms, have conversations with teachers to seek even more understanding, or just mindfully say, we prefer to do this lesson at home. And that's absolutely okay with us. Anything else, Carrie, that you might want to add from an elementary perspective?
No, I think like what you just articulated, the more that we can share out so people know ahead of time and be proactive, I think that's our goal.
Yeah, and I think, just listening to some concerns that were expressed at the board meeting, connecting with our families, community members, I think a lot of this is in the news at a larger level, regionally or nationally, and everyone can hear a story like, ooh, this teacher did this and that, and another piece of having fully articulated curriculum is that, so we have a shared expectation of what's going on in our classrooms, and if something is not aligned, we can address that as well. So certainly, I think some of that, sometimes fear, right, on behalf of what's going on in the classroom is fueled by news stories that we hear, aware of, and it's like, ooh, is that happening here? I don't, how do I know that it's not? Yeah.
And I think that no matter what product we use for social and emotional learning, a teacher could go off curriculum.
Sure.
And that's a separate issue, and it needs to be addressed separately. So I think that's important to mention.
Yeah, and I think that assurance that we would handle that, and having the tools for our teachers to have materials and lessons, good foundational pieces for them to use, and then also too that shared awareness, so you have a shared expectation. So if something were to happen like that in any class or curriculum, it would be really noticeable. So.
I want to talk about the communication piece to parents. What does that look like, or what will that look like? Is it in grade 2, these are going to be the topics covered in approximate times, or or is it the week before saying, we're going to cover this next week, or what does that look like for parents?
So we welcomed back students last week, teachers just prior, and talked about this certainly. And we talked about having a general communication to go out to all families from the building level. We would reinforce it from the district level. So, hey, making you aware, here's the lessons. And then when you get down to the school level, having some shared communication. And then teachers generally are saying, here's all the lessons for the year, take a look ahead. It's all there and accessible to you. And here's where we are as a classroom. So that they'll be using that as a resource as well. Saying, hey, we're looking at this, and giving them enough room to be responsive to their students, because it's not like on, September 13th, we're all doing X. That's not being responsive to kids. So generally, our classroom teachers have a class newsletter that goes out weekly, bi-weekly, yeah, to alert them, so that they've been talked to about, hey, what does that look like in advance? So people know where they are.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, this is out for everyone to look at.
Right,
Right
so
now.
kind of at the beginning of the school year.
Yep.
This is the broad picture of what we plan to cover this year, and then the weekly newsletter is just saying, hey, we're at this point. Okay.
Can I just add too, that the school counselors typically too also put it then in the newsletter that comes out from the principal too,
Okay.
like this month is what the lessons will focus on.
Okay. And then as the links get updated in this, will those links be able to be in those newsletters then, like? Okay.
Yeah.
Or even the broad link, like,
No problem.
just reminding you, here's our social emotional.
Yeah, so once
learning.
we have this conversation, we'll be doing some updating based on our conversation today too.
I know that's a big project, I'm not saying it has to be today, but.
A lot will be today. But wait, look, we have a really amazing and responsive team. They've done some really good work to get everything articulated. And to Tani's point around curriculum is one thing, and the resource you select to support that is another thing. And then, so how do we, the nuance between the two, there's a lot to come around. And in this case, when we get to it, second step is a primary resource. However, it's under heavy copyrights, so I can't just post a lot of stuff. So it feels less transparent when you have to say, oh, well, to see it, you have to come here. Well, you only have to come here right now because we're still navigating COVID and kind of not having our campuses so wide open. Otherwise, it's available at every school. If we were functioning in a typical year, all the resources are right at the school site. You could see them at any time. But in this case, trying to minimize visitors at a building coming in and out, we're just having them come here to see resources. But again, they're under copyright, so I can't just link those directly to the website. And then in the upper and intermediate grades, they have resource periods. They're taught by teachers. They might be co-taught by counselors. They've got some carved out time in there to go through what are those different objectives and what does that learning look like. So very much, I want to say, Carrie, I've seen the posters. Silverbrook has kind of like the Silverbrook way. They've got good reminders, good posters, visuals in our halls around expected behavior things. And then as you're starting to get older, and we'll see this in the kind of the continuum of learning, looking at setting goals and project management and time management and things of that nature. So kind of those skills grow. Like I said, you're starting with the early ones of how do I play with a friend, how do I navigate trying to join a group at recess, and how do, I've got a project that I have to time manage because it's due 3 weeks, and how do I set goals for myself? So it's a lot of different things. And also incorporated into this is all of the anti-bullying lessons. So I'll highlight those as well. High school, we had a high school piece on here. Their team, we had some of the draft work. There is a high school team. Carrie works in alignment with that team. They don't have their lessons developed yet, so there is actually nothing currently in play at the high school. But that doesn't mean it's stopped. It just means the team is still working. We want the lessons to be articulated to the level that you'll see coming up, and they just weren't there yet because we wanted to make sure everyone had that information in advance. So the team is still working. I don't know when their next meeting is, but I think they're working out of the gate this fall, so a couple weeks. So we'll just keep everyone consistently updated regarding their progress. So that's kind of the when that happens. And I know the vision for the high school was to do a scattering of lessons, maybe 10 to 15 lessons. They have, is it resource also?
Yeah.
It's like a homeroom resource time, and they would just utilize that opportunity. But again, nothing is on schedule right now for the high school level. But I didn't want you to think we just missed it. It's still there. So then this framework is something that you saw for each grade. Let me just kind of went through. We had 4K, then we had a whole other chart that showed kindergarten through 4th grade in the chunks. You see at each chart, again, that color coding means something. What does it map back to, kind of big idea-wise? So you can see those lessons and how they align. Again, noting what lesson, but not committing to exactly what week that's occurring, but you can see there's lessons throughout the year.
Are any of these hot links right now?
Yep, I'm gonna show you that work. So then we also had the 5th through 8th grade, okay? So that is what's presently on the website, and what the team's worked is to link these. So I'm gonna go back up and show some samples. So let's just take a listening. This is bookmarking in the document. It would be navigated on the website. But we have under these lessons, so I want you to take a look at the format and provide some feedback. What we've really talked about as a team is being really transparent, really having well-articulated curriculum, and making sure that we're calling out, what's the lesson, what are we attempting to address, what are the vocabulary words we're using, because that's meaningful, and making sure that we have shared meaning on those things. And then understanding exactly what resources are used, and then if there's other family resources. So this is an example of a 4K one. You can see there's some ready to learn visuals, and everything would be linked. So, these are things, I'm sure you can kind of remember that, eyes on me. You can almost hear your early childhood teachers kind of in that sing-song voice, making sure kids are ready to listen and learn, kind of thing. So we're making sure to link resources within.
Jen, will you scroll down just a little bit and see if you can find one that has more of the family resource right there? There we go. So that was the other thing that we were trying to capture is, at the early childhood level, family engagement is a huge piece of this. I mean, we want families to have accessible tools to reinforce things at home if they choose to. So not for every single lesson, because there isn't a resource that necessarily supports every lesson from home. But we wanted to make sure that those were linked as well. So, just the Backpack Connection series and a couple other series that are really, really good parenting resources.
And I think too, the work that the team did to add some of the books that they might read in class gives you a great idea too, great story time for at home if that's something you're working on at home as well, to reinforce with a different skill. So again, the document takes you through each lesson. And again, this was one of the pieces that felt like it was secret, right? Because here we've got this resource, but it's copyrighted, so I can't put it out there. So we've deconstructed to give people that information. So let's dig into maybe a higher grade lesson, because early learning, I think, is a little bit easier to navigate. But let's dig into some hot topics. Anything in, I think you could ask us, we could probably name every lesson in the curriculum, but anything in kindergarten through 4th grade catching your eye you want to just drill into to look at?
Something in the green did.
No, that's okay.
I was showing empathy at school. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Showing empathy.
At school,
At school, the bottom one, the bottom row.
I really need to wear my bifocals.
Thank you for the return to home links.
Emily's
Emily's
got it.
When I was in it yesterday, I was like, oh my God, there's 78 pages. Oh, return to home, yay.
So the one thing that we still can't share in that way are the videos that are in second step. So as a primary resources, this is what we hear. We're concerned about, one, we're always concerned about the internet. Kids are 3 clicks from, hey, somewhere you shouldn't be. So we have a lot of filters on our system. Second step is not something that kids log into. It's a portal for teachers to log into and retrieve lesson pieces, like the videos.
Okay, so kids do not have
Nope.
a login, password?
No, and
Okay.
kids can't access, even if I were to give you the link, it would route you to a login page, so they can't access that. There is one video, remind me of the name of this. It's
Give me some more clues.
Love and Respect.
Oh, yeah, yep, so that's actually a national hotline, loveisrespect.org.
That comes up in middle school
It
lesson.
does, and I actually think it's in like lesson 24 in the 8th grade, where they reference that as a site that could be potentially shared to students. And I can't even remember the exact content, you'd have to go up and look at it. And as a teacher, when you log into the site, the teacher has the ability to click on it. But what we've indicated, because it's a site that we've reviewed and determined not necessarily in a site that we would approve as the West Bend School District, there's some information in it that teaches kids how to kind of circumvent, I can't think of the word, like where they collect their address or something like that, but it's got a couple of things we've determined it's not a.
Right, yeah.
We've determined it's not an appropriate or approved site. So within this document, it indicates that for the teacher, that this part of the lesson, although it's in second step, is not approved by the West Bend School District, and it's blocked. So if anybody tries, and in fact, I tried the other day, can I get into it? I can't. It's blocked on the website. So, you know, even if the teacher were to accidentally click on it, and again, it's clearly indicated in this curriculum document not to utilize that, not to teach it, they can't pull it up. So there's multiple things where we previewed and just determined, you know, this is an unnecessary resource or it's not approved by us, and then we've indicated that in the document.
And what we wanted to do was, because again, when you, like you said, not one resource meets all needs, but we wanted to clearly keep that front and center so that people knew that that wasn't there. And it's not something we use and it can't be accessed. But again, going back to our students and what access they have, this is there's kits that have a kind of old school teacher manual, there's some posters. Really, those are K through 4. And then when you're getting into those intermediate years, it turns into more of an online resource for our staff that they can log into. But again, all the kits that we have, everything is here, accessible. If anyone wants to come in, they can reach out to myself or Emily. We're open during our regular office hours, but then we all certainly have late schedules, so if you need something to accommodate after hours, they should just email and we can coordinate that with them. And we're also happy to sit down and log in so that you can view some of the videos. And then we've talked about with principals, you know, hey, making sure your families have this accessible. Do we need to do something at each kind of site or an elementary one to just, hey, we're gonna log in, we're gonna go through these, you know, and watch them so people can, because again, our goal is to be very transparent around exactly what we're using and how we're using it and what we're not using, but making sure it's accessible in a manner that doesn't put us or a family or someone looking at it in violation of copyright.
Emily, when you were talking about the things that we're not planning on using, and you said some of those videos are blocked, that's great. If the ones that aren't blocked, you said are spelled out in here, but is that something that's also talked about with the teachers before? Because
Yeah, so.
I just want to make sure we're covering
No,
our bases.
and that's actually something Jen
Oh, I
and I
didn't
have
read
been
that.
talking about, is what does that communication look like? So all of our staff will have access to this, but we need to be really intentional in making sure that they understand it's laid out, and here are some things that you need to pay special attention to. So if you're an 8th grade teacher, please key in on these 3 lessons and some of the modifications that we've made to them.
Okay.
So yes, that is in the plan, that we recognize that communication has to be very explicit.
I kind of want to push on the spot here.
Go for it.
So I understand if you don't have this, you know, you just recall this instantly, but we're all adults here, and I think it's really important that we give maybe an example of something that would be blocked.
If you know what,
Like,
Don't try and pull up naughty stuff right now.
Whether it's a topic
No, I won't,
or.
but I'll.
Sure, there's
show you,
keywords.
Right.
So there's
Like,
keywords
let's-
that are gonna be filtered, and for students, we also have additional layers that even if a student puts something into search, and
Okay.
it's a keyword, you know, anything around, you know, I'd have to think of what the hot list is.
Because otherwise, the reason why I ask is because otherwise, we're assuming that we're thinking about the same thing, and we might not be.
Right.
And
Um,
so it's important that we have.
Yeah, I think we can get some more information, because
Okay.
one of the things that we also have, people should be aware of, is even if we've, you know, blocked video, a student who's using our computers, our filters, even when they're putting in that they're searching for something of question, triggers an alert to the administration so that that can be looked into as well.
And from my understanding, those are federal, that's a federal rule, isn't it? I mean, Tim Harder.
I was gonna say, I can
has-
ask Tim to come in and speak to some of the securities and the measures and those pieces as a follow-up.
But I think that we are going a step further, because obviously if the federal rule for blocking certain things is in place, then any educational product would not be able to
Yeah.
have those. So our blocks are actually above and beyond what's required.
Yeah, I would say that we have additional steps of not just filtering, you know, blocking, but also, like I said, that key piece on searching, and being able to tag into that to understand that that's a more intense piece that some don't do.
Right.
I can validate the searching thing. My kids have been trying to do the research on it.
Tripping into,
Oh, I can't get in that.
right? And sometimes, and that happens because of that, because of that intense filtering in those pieces. It might be something that really does need to be unlocked. It's okay, but there's some word that somehow
Yeah.
it's triggering something, and that should just be sent to our help desk. And then there is a review of content and making sure that it's okay. Because, sometimes it overfilters. So I'd rather have it overfilter than
Yeah,
underfilter.
exactly. So just an example of what it might look like. I mean, we're trying to bring attention to not just a website that we've said is not going to be a piece of our lesson. So this is a lesson in 8th grade. It deals with unhealthy relationships. And it will go through the social emotional key concepts and vocabulary. What are the concepts that we're focusing on in teaching? You know, is there a student handout? Is there a video? What's the video titled? And again, you can always come in and review those videos. We can't post those because of copyright. What's the primary lesson? But then also kind of acknowledging some of the important pieces for teachers, okay? And parents, you know, this particular lesson addresses all types of relationships. So it isn't, you know, unhealthy friendships, unhealthy family relationships, whatever it might be. It's not just dating relationships, but we also acknowledge that 8th graders are thinking about that. And so that there might be a scenario connected to that. And it would tell, you know, there is a question about unhealthy dating relationships. So parents know the topic is broad, but yeah, there is a question related to that. So you can determine whether or not you're comfortable with that.
There's also, can you show me, I think it's in the bullying, the asterisk around some of the bullying lessons where, but I think that's another key thing when you talk about, you know, parents and families as partners, and understanding there's some good asterisk pieces. I think it's around bullying and like,
Yeah.
this is a lesson that might surface some feelings, you know, for deeper conversation or, you know, all of those pieces.
Which one do you want to pick?
I think if you've just got it under the bullying as, yep.
Yeah, so again, you can see that there's specific language there that acknowledges the sensitive topics that might come up, and that in the event that a student shares something that is concerning, either shares something related to being bullying, being bullied, observing bullying, or an unsafe response to bullying, that teachers recognize this is the expectation. This is how we'll follow up with kids. This is who will follow up with kids. There's comments about, you know, there are times that we're gonna wanna connect a student with the school counselor depending upon the kind of information shared.
And, you know, those middle school years, having been a middle school teacher a long time, you know, everyone's navigating all of a sudden new friends, all these different elementary schools coming together, and, you know, things change, right? Their friendships start evolving and changing, and you talk about the relationship piece and, you know, understanding that it's okay, people's interests change and your friend groups might change, and just helping students navigate that change. And then sometimes, again, behaviors interfere with learning and may become disruptive for an individual student or more than, and we need to address that. And so helping kids to understand what's not okay, so that they can be in a safe spot to say, you know what, I'm having trouble with my friend group and this is what's happening and this doesn't feel okay, and how can we help in that manner? And there's a lot of people who can help, and again, that's oftentimes in partnership with our families. Sometimes they're seeing it at home first, and they're calling us saying, you know, I noticed, you know, they said they're coming home and having trouble on the playground with so-and-so, can you help out, can you look at this, can you let me know what's going on? So that we can be mutually supportive.
Well, and they can use this to go home and talk to their parents. I think it's important that families realize that we're not trying to keep all their personal stuff at school. I mean, this is to facilitate communication at home as well about what's happening at school even. So, I mean, when this was first presented, I viewed it as a resource, like you said, to help kids go home and talk about what's happening at school, which, you know, there are some kids that have no problem doing that, but I was the parent of kids that had a little more trouble with that, so I like that a lot about this.
Yeah. So, and again, you know, our goal is to be completely transparent and also to have people reach out. You know, people are voicing some concerns and we're able to go in, you know, when we first heard about the video and those pieces, looking at this, making sure, like, hey, I want to make sure our filters are catching this, you know, being able to have checks and balances, even those conversations, not just between, you know, child and family, but our families and our staff, so that we can build awareness and build stronger learning for our kids is really important too. And again, in partnership, if there's something that a family wishes to not be addressed at school in any way, shape, or form, you know, we would absolutely respect that. They just need to make their wishes known to either at the teacher level or the principal level, so that we can make accommodations. But what we did, again, was really harness the work that was going on, translate those lessons so that each one of these will update the website. If you feel, I would like to get the information in the hands of our families sooner rather than later, and then call out the information's been posted and have them take a deep dive into it, and then work with our principals to get those preliminary messages out. Perhaps, kind of like I said, a watch party, if you will, of, you know, come and gather and watch videos. They're certainly accessible all the time, but making it, you know, a set aside time, you know, maybe on a weekend, something like that. We've even talked with, you know, is this something we could have at the library so that people could view it during the weekends or something like that. There is no, you know, there's no goal in not making it accessible to our families. We want everyone to look at it and to provide feedback so that we can be in attention to refinement if needed, or just, again, respecting wishes. I think some of the other pieces, and you guys can help navigate, a lot of pieces that get connected, not just, you know, second step as a primary resource, but around making materials accessible. But then there's also the thing around data. So the students do not have access to Second Step as their own portal. Again, it's a resource used by the staff here. But then you get into, and we've talked about here as part of, you know, social emotional learning, and like how do we even know where kids are? How do we know when they're struggling, that kind of thing? What anecdotal evidence do we have? But there was also discussion around DESA, which was an assessment tool that was piloted last year in 2 spots. Now, Emily is new to her role, certainly longstanding in our district and in the work, but new in her role as director. So that pilot was just a small pilot, and I know that she is not moving forward on or rolling out until she even assesses what is that, how would it be used, and what the alignment is to those pieces. So I think that was another piece, and you hear that not just about that assessment, but any assessment. As things are moved to online and cloud-based, you know, people want to make sure that their child's information is protected. When people go through the registration or enrollment process, they're having to give specific pieces of permission around that. We also have secondary agreements. So in addition to regular agreements between any company that's utilizing data in any way, there's secondary agreements that would protect our students, our identity, so that stays with us. And again, there was also the piece around, is something going into my child's cumulative record on this? Is this, you know, this is not a traditional class in which kids have lessons, homework, grades, or ongoing tests. This is just kind of a part of learning, and you can see how it's just highlighted throughout a day, but it's not a specific course of study for any of our students, so there's no grades associated. Now, in a case where a student may be having behavioral difficulties, and there's a different intervention, or maybe they're doing a small group with a counselor, all that is sought with the counselor and the family for permission to meet in a small group, permission to work on that goal. There's different permissions that kick into place when you're doing something that's a little bit more targeted. And there's certainly even services through special education that really support kids who have emotional or behavioral disabilities. But again, this is not that service. This is just the mini lessons that we'll go into and launch. So again, what we've tried to do in the last couple of weeks was deconstruct, pull out of, and make transparent what we could to our families with those links and those pieces. We'd like to update the website and launch some of those resources. I think given the just the heightened response from the community, and having that at a board meeting where there is public input, those pieces, I think our next steps are to really report to the full board and to talk about, should this be viewed instead of as an avenue of student services and a service and a piece that helps support a learning environment, treating it as a curriculum where we formally review it, adopt it on a cycle, and do that. So I think that's something we should pursue at the board meeting and discuss that.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would love for families to see this and be able to click around in here.
Mhm.
I mean, I clicked at a couple, but I mean, to be honest, I'm not going to click on all of them unless they're called out to me.
Yeah.
But as a parent, it would have been nice to, I had a daughter in middle school who got cyberbullied. It would have been awesome to be able to click on that and see what she was learning about and how I could help her with
Sure.
that information. So I think getting this to families and seeing what the hot topics are or what needs to be refined, questions about what the resources are, I think that's where we're gonna find those.
And I think, you know, even as this is a committee, even a board meeting is awkward in that, you know, people can come and talk, but there's no engagement. I think Emily and I, as people have reached out, which I'm grateful for, please continue to do so, have talked about maybe, you know, a session having some listening sessions, understanding, going through, being able to pop up videos, address questions, and listen to concerns so that we're being responsive to that. I would really suggest then, again, in the interim, getting this information out, people can opt out, doing some of that work around listening, and then bringing it back to committee for this is what we heard, these are, potential revisions of that work, and then taking it up to the board at that point.
Oh, I'm very much in favor of having having this as an agenda item. When you've gone through all the steps
Sure.
to make it the most efficient use of the board's time for public comment, public discussion,
Sure.
all that. And I don't want to interrupt your presentation.
No,
I
this
have a
is-
few other things.
No,
Okay.
I want you
Okay.
to go through, this is just showing kind of what that looks like and talking about next
Okay.
steps. It'll certainly come up at a next board meeting as you report on the work of any committee,
Mhm.
and do that, and we'll get this out to everyone, and in turn the board would receive it
Okay.
then too, but.
As I was doing my homework for today, the thing that I noticed when I was at castle.org was there's the light version and then there's the fundamental version. And my understanding is that the fundamental version's turned off, we don't use that one. That seems to be the one that was triggering the most objections.
You'd have to show, hey, we're not used to using it in those terms,
Okay.
so just, you'll have to just show us on that. I think one of the issues is it got wrapped up very quickly into conversations around CRT, and was this, indeed some kind of avenue in which that was coming into schools, and making sure that it wasn't, and making sure that we were looking at it through multiple perspectives, because I've had some really great conversations where, a word means one thing to us in education, and externally it means something else. So making sure we're building shared meaning around, well, what does this word mean?
It's the fundamental one.
Okay.
I don't connect to the internet well down here, so I can't pull it up. But, yeah, it was basically, there were two versions, and one seemed to be a little more going down the path of what we're not looking for in this community.
Right.
And I can share
Yeah,
that.
yeah, share it with us to make sure
Um,
that we've got that addressed.
And also, I just want to just have clarity and verification that none of this makes any particular groups, there's no black and white discussion of if you're in a particular group, then you're an oppressor, and if you're in a particular group, you're always going to be a victim. And as long as we're not, I mean, we're all on the same page and absolutely clear that
Yeah.
that is not okay in any circumstance.
Right. And I think that was, like I said, some of the fear where this started coming in with, is this a vehicle for
Right.
some of that? Or, like you said, that minimizing or doing that, and it is not. Again, our hope is to put everything, this is what we're using, how we're using it, so that's really clear and transparent.
Yeah, I want to be sure to address that specifically. But otherwise, I'm really in favor of social emotional learning as a generic,
Yeah.
topic, because these are the soft skills that our community's been asking for in school, and I really value that. At Delta Defense, we have 2 full-time therapists, because if people don't have things that they feel, people need to be able to communicate what's going on and with themselves, and if they feel like they can't, that affects their ability to learn, produce, all the things that they're there to do. So I really value this type of education, but making sure it's in alignment with the values of our community is important.
Yeah, and I think one of those other pieces is, you're creating a safe and nurturing environment, because when's the last time you had to be in a classroom and stand up in front of a group and talk, or, answer questions on the spot, or and there's that emotional piece where you feel confident that it's okay for me to make mistakes in front of my peers, it's okay to do this because I'm a learner, we're all learners, and here's how to support each other, and because that can be a scary time.
And that is actually the number one reason why culture at Delta Defense is as good as it is, because we encourage making mistakes, and that mistakes are not a bad thing. And that's different, I think, than in past decades, or at least how it was when I was growing up.
Sure, and
So-
I think that goal orientation, that kind of future self and goal orientation, for us, it's reinforcing with kids, maybe you're not there, but you're just not there yet.
Right.
And what are we all gonna do to help you get there? Whether it's, oh man, I'm learning multiplication for the first time and I don't have it, and this one next to me can do this. It's like, you're just not there yet. And what are we gonna do? And hey, let's use some of our goal setting. And if this is a goal we wanna work on, how do we wanna work on? How might we achieve it? Those kinds of things, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna second all that. I think social emotional learning as a general term is important. We need to help form whole human beings, and these are the skills that make you be a good human and go out into the world and the workplace and do that same thing. I think these topics are great for parents to be able to engage with their kids on, and maybe it's giving their kids a talking point to have at the kitchen table too.
And I think that's, coming here and just being in the community for a year, it is such a deep community. There's generational roots. People are really invested in their kids. And, we're not trying to wrestle away roles as parents and families, but we're trying to collaborate with each other and make everything really transparent so that we can mutually support kids as they learn and grow, and how we can do that together. So I think, again, getting our ear to the ground and working with teams around what are the concerns, showing that we're revisiting or in protection of, what is that West Bend way, and how are we doing it our way, and not just part and parcel taking something that, got fed to us. We're gonna make things our own. How do we show people that we are protecting that and make sure that they have a clear understanding of what's in front of their kids?
I also think there's that piece, while we've heard from a lot of engaged parents, there also are those parents who are not. And maybe these skills aren't being taught or reinforced at home. And so this is an opportunity to help that child.
Certainly could be the case.
And I think with our mental health crisis in this country, this opens up opportunities for kids to talk, and I think that can be a place of healing.
And the commitment that we've made as a district to make sure those professionals, just as you've done in your workplace, but making sure professionals are accessible. So while these might be mini lessons that a
It
teacher
might
does,
trigger
they're-
something for
Yep, they're
a child,
supported
though.
by counselors in every building, full-time school psychologists in every building, and then access to, other therapy, those kinds of things, if they're needed.
Right.
So I think that, Emily and I will continue to do the work of listening, refining, having some actual pieces to cultivate more. We'll get this out in the hands of families to dig in, go deeper, come see this. I have a couple of listening sessions that will certainly invite board members to, but just to work with our community and our family members to seek to understand and refine where needed, so we can provide not just assurance, but just solid learning for kids. Any other questions?
Or suggestions, just in terms of, we'll do those pieces so that we have a more comprehensive understanding to bring back to the board, but are there specific things that are gonna be very important for us to highlight in that conversation?
I think highlighting the resources is gonna be the big thing with the community, to be able to show them what we're using and how to access it, or on those copyrighted things, to had the opportunity for them to come in.
I think Kathy had mentioned this back in the spring when this was first introduced, but in light of recent concerns, I'd like a refresher. How did we come to select this product over other products?
I see evidence of this in the district as early as 2007, 2008.
Of this particular
Of
product?
Second
though?
Step.
Okay,
Yep, iterations of Second Step have been here a very long time.
okay.
So we can look at the evolution of that product, what was, and any kind of updates to those things. But we can trace that back. And like I said, you know, when it goes into kind of as a student service support versus how we're really utilizing it now, that's why, as you said, don't treat this as if it's its own curriculum and put it on a cycle of review, do all that. So even though those ongoing reviews came before here, it was treated just a little bit differently, I think.
Okay.
So I
I
think
would
that's
be
one
in
of the
favor of
pieces.
treating it as a curriculum,
Yeah.
so that we're, you know, us or future board members are able to see it on a rotating basis.
Yeah, I think that's how we're developing it to that point. So then, again, that always then goes back to that local control of our full board having approval. So we can do that and have that, I'll talk with Chris too around, as we redo it, refine it, let's just bring it back formally for approval then too. So that we're saying these are the pieces that are approved and, you know, this is what we're doing and how we're treating it from this time forward. I think that's a really, a strong step and a step that is unique to just a few districts, really kind of putting it out there, getting it gathered in that way and treating it as such, so.
I think our community expects us to make this public, and I think if making it a curriculum is the way to do that, then I'm all in favor of that.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll set that course of action, some of those pieces, and then I'll work with Chris, our board president, as the work of the committee, and then when it gets folded to full board. So I would assume at the next board meeting, we'll be doing a comprehensive update. Emily and I can give you information, kind of report on work in the interim, so that you've got that as part of the update. And then we'll certainly share this with the full board in our community, so that they can, again, do their due diligence and start reviewing as well. So, and then we'll put that on the future agenda. Any other, as Emily was saying, recommendations for our immediate next steps?
Yeah.
There's certainly some consistent themes, and I've been really appreciative. Just another shameless plug for reach out to Emily Melstrand or myself at the district, so that you can connect with us. We'll get something into school updates, as well as our district update on this, to encourage people to connect on the conversation in the interim so that they can be involved too. Thank you.
Thank you for all of you for the work on putting this together. It's very user-friendly and easy to understand.
Yeah, navigation's key.
For real, that could be really overwhelming, and to be able to just click on what you're interested in is, I'm sure, a lot of work went into that, so.
I think it'll help people focus too. Like you said, you can kind of look at that list, and click around. You know, I know for me, when you look at, you know, an 8th grade lesson, we're gonna say what sexual harassment is. It's like, oh, that's catching my interest and I wanna know, how is that defined? What are they doing? What about this? So it helps people kind of really focus on, and whether it's a grade level that their own child's in or just comprehensively, because that helps do some of that work. Perfect. That is enough to get us moving forward on what to do next.
Okay. Well, we will adjourn then.
Thank you.